Event Horizon is an unusual film that tries to give you a look inside hell, literally. But this version of hell was inspired by some surprising sources you're definitely going to want to know about. But first, how does a spaceship end up in hell in the first place?
The Event Horizon is a ship featuring a device called a gravity drive that can fold space to create a wormhole, allowing it to travel to any point in the universe. But after traveling through the wormhole, the ship went missing and the crew disappeared. Several years later, a distress signal was recovered containing the disturbing screams of the crew, and when the ship reappears empty, a rescue ship called the Lewis and Clark is sent to investigate.
Halfway through the film, it is revealed that the ship had actually traveled to another dimension, hell. It might sound like the hell we all know about from the Bible, but this vision of hell actually comes from someplace else. Have you guys ever heard of the tradition that describes hell as a place where angels or demons torture the people that live there?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what they told us in Sunday school.
Mm-hmm.
Is it really? Okay,
I went to a pretty interesting one. Not
what
the same
if I
one.
told you the whole torturing angels, torturing demons thing doesn't actually come from the Bible? Do you have any idea where the movie got this idea from?
Diagnetics.
What is that?
I know what that is.
It's a
Tell
book
me
that
more.
they used to sell in
On
the
TV.
80s on TV. I think it has to do with Scientology, but it's probably not from there.
I remember the commercial, Diagnetics, and it was like a book, and it had like fire and stuff in the background.
Yeah. But it's not from that. Where's it from, Nathan?
I'm glad you asked. The depiction of fallen angels or demons torturing people in hell can be traced back to a suggestion from St. Augustine and later the Italian poem Divine Comedy by Dante. It's an evolution of the biblical story and one Event Horizon plays with. So guys, something from this film should remind you of another film we've talked about ghosts. What's this sound like to you? After traveling to hell, the Event Horizon becomes sentient, feeding off of the negative emotions of the crew members.
Rocky 4.
False.
Nah, Ghostbusters 2.
Yeah, the slime feeds off the negative emotion of the people of New York. So a question in this film is, whose negative emotion is the ship feeding off of, and what is the sin per se of the film that they committed?
I think that's where they messed up with this movie, or they messed up because they were forced to finish early because they didn't give us any information about where the ship has been other than a video of people getting mutilated and their fists being shoved down their throats. And then Laurence Fishburne saying, let's get out of here. You know, that was basically the gist of it. So yeah, it would have been cool to know more about it because right now all we can do is speculate that either A, they did find a wormhole or a black hole to hell, which I don't think you can, because if you can find a black hole to hell, that means you should be able to find a black hole to heaven, maybe? Who knows?
Yeah.
So maybe it is just a dimension of pure evil that drives people crazy, or it would
They
at
say
least
both
drives
in the
humans
film.
crazy.
I was like, Dr. Weir is, I think, affected the most by this. He created and built the ship, and he seems the one that has the most attachment to the ship, and he's definitely the most affected by whatever this is on the ship, because you get it kind of early on. He doesn't want to leave it, and I always got the feeling watching this movie that he knows more than what he's letting on. Like, I think he knows where the ship went, and part of me thinks that that's where he wants to go. That's how I was kind of getting those vibes, but then, yeah, I'm sure there was more to it than that.
Too. There, in that single dropped line about the ship feeding off of the crew's negative emotions, then we find out that Dr. Weir lied about where the ship had been. I think part of it, I mean, we don't know much because this movie was rushed because Titanic was delayed. So they ended up pushing this movie out basically unfinished. And a bunch of scenes were cut that after the movie was successful on DVD, Paramount wanted to release those scenes, but they were lost. But what I can gather from what we do know in the film, I think Weir was so attached to the ship and the technology that he neglects his family. So we get like one flashback scene where she appears to be committing suicide, And he says, I know I haven't been there for you. So I think he let this obsession with science and technology, which isn't a bad thing until it becomes an obsession, replace his caring for people. And he takes that into the event horizon and he lies to the crew. And I think from those two little bits of information, we're supposed to gather that, like, he is the evil that the ship is feeding off of. And then that just creates a cycle and more people die. What do you guys think?
I agree. He was seeing things and hearing things on the ship. And then when somebody else on the crew comes out and says, I just saw this, I can't explain it, he'd always try to, like, oh, well, no, it's probably this and it's probably this. He's seeing the same things that they're seeing, but he refused to acknowledge it. So that's where I was like, he's hiding something. Like, he knows what's going on here.
He's gaslighting the crew.
Right.
So, guys, do you think this film deserves its status as a cult classic?
This movie, it really wasn't what I was expecting it. It's billed as a sci-fi horror film, and I really didn't get the horror aspect of it. There were some suspenseful moments, but to me it was almost more like an action film. I didn't really get the jump scares. I didn't get the eeriness feeling that I was kind of hoping to get. However, as a sci-fi film, I thought it was really well done, despite the fact that it was rushed and it wasn't really completed and they had to cut some stuff out. I thought it was a fun film. I think that if you're interested in, in that kind of stuff, that you would enjoy this movie, but don't go in looking at it like I'm going to be, scared out of it, because I don't think you're going to get that feeling. But, for an hour and a half, it's entertaining.
Yeah, I don't like the term cult film for this movie. Cult films are movies that were deep, and I don't think people understood, like the 80s movie Repo Man with Emilio Estevez. That movie tanked at the box office, but then as people started watching it, once it hits VHS and then DVD, more and more people started seeing deeper into that movie and the themes it was going towards, and it was like, oh, we didn't catch that when it first came out. So, you got movies like that have cult followings, and then you have cult followings like The Room or Birdemic, that movies are just so bad that you can sit there and laugh and make fun of it throughout the entire film. This movie wasn't bad like that, but it wasn't deep like other cult films. It was just, like you said, it was a movie that was forced out too soon, and they didn't get to tell the story that we needed to see. That being said, it was a fun movie. I happen to be a big fan of the actor Nathan Fillion. I've seen everything he's in, and he's currently in a TV show called The Rookie, which also stars Richard T. Jones. He played Cooper in the movie, and he was hilarious. So to see him in a younger version, because this movie came out over 20 years ago, a younger version of him and his one-liners, I can't say them because most of them, have swear words in it, but the way he says them, they're funny. And he gave a little bit of a comic relief in the middle of this darkness of people going crazy. So that was kind of cool to me and a surprise, because I haven't seen this movie in years. So anyway, it's a fun movie. I just really wish they A, would have had more time to make it, or B, wouldn't have lost all the footage that explained everything. So yeah, I enjoy the movie. I think people should check it out, but at the same point, I wouldn't consider it a cult classic personally.
Yeah, there's a great idea here, a ship that goes to hell. I mean, that's creepy and scary, and it could have made for something really fascinating, but we kind of needed that character development for Dr. Weir. We needed some motivation, and I think we needed to know why the ship was alive. That line is dropped, and it's like, well, how did a ship come alive? And what about traveling to hell would bring it to life? And what is it doing, And we don't get any of that. I think it's got great atmosphere, but then in the last 30 minutes or so, it starts to rely on some horror cliches. So it loses a little bit of steam. I view it as an incomplete film. It's hard to recommend it to me, but there's a good idea here.
And you can tell that they had to kind of rush into it, because this movie has some serious actors in it. big actors at the time, and then actors who became more popular. We talked about Richard Jones, but you had Jason Isaacs in this movie. The guy who shows up in Harry Potter. He's what's his name's dad, the bad guy's dad. Of course, you got Laurence Fishburne, Sam Neill. They're big people, but Kathleen Quinlan, she was on a high right around this time. She had just done and was nominated for an Oscar for Apollo 13. She was big from that. You had Sunshine from Remember the Titans. Of course, he showed up and had a couple lines and then got hurt, and then had a couple more lines and got hurt, and then just spent the entire time in cryo freeze or whatever they put him in. But even Sean Pertwee, you've seen him. He's a character actor, been in a bunch of stuff. I mean, the main crew they were all well-known actors at the time, or very up-and-coming actors. And you just didn't get to see him as much. Why was Kathleen Quinlan seeing her kids running around? They didn't really go into that. Was she feeling guilt because she had to give up time to run this mission? Or was that just something that this evil ship found in her mind and was messing with her? They just didn't go into why people were getting these flashes or anything like that. It was just like, it went to a bad place. Bad things happen. Let's leave. And then everyone dies, except for 3. But yeah. But at the same point, like I said, it's a fun movie. Of course, you got the, which seems to be in every space movie, you got the sacrifice of the main character, giving his life to make sure everyone else can survive. So I always enjoy that in movies. So I did like that too.
This movie is a case of what might have been. But how about another alien possession movie? One that caused a city to sue the movie studio. Find out in this video next.
Read Dianetics by L. Ron Hubbard.